Hello everyone. I am going to try to make the 3 SHTF video that Asymmetrical Prepper and also Will Patriot was asking us to do as a response to their video about the same thing. And they want us to talk about the most likely event that we might experience where we live, the most outlandish and unlikely event that we think might happen that would be disastrous and change everything, and then also a third example of what we think we're not prepared for that might happen, that we're worried about the most. And that's very difficult for me because in the area in which I live, there's a couple likely things that could happen, and a lot of them are not permanent disasters. Like in the area that I live, every winter there's a chance that there could be such a terrible blizzard storm, everybody could get trapped at home, where there's so much snow or something we couldn't leave, where the temperatures would plummet down to 50 below zero wind chills and nobody could go outside. You know, that kind of stuff happens here sometimes, and it could happen any given year. It's not a permanent disaster, right? That would go on for about a week or maybe a little bit longer, but hey, you know, I worry about that every year because I don't have a vehicle. So yeah, I do plan for that all the time. I would say there are a couple of more permanent kind of likely disasters that could happen. Sorry, I live right by the highway and there's a lot of loud traffic. I apologize for that. I know my lighting in here sucks too. I'm going to talk about what I think is a more permanent kind of SHTF that could happen. And that would be probably an EMP. I think that that is very likely. I just do. I know a lot of people have that on their outlandish example list, but I think that that is likely. And I personally don't worry too much about that, but I do think that it is likely. I mean, there are many very unlikely disasters or events that could take place, right? There's not just one unlikely. I don't know if there's one that's the most unlikely to me. Like, I would think truly, because I want it to happen, that it won't, would be an alien invasion. I want an alien invasion to happen, but it's not going to happen. And I always feel like it's not going to happen because I want it to happen, but I think it's really just because it's not likely. But you know why I want an alien invasion to happen? Because it would give everybody on Earth a common enemy. And if everybody on Earth had a common enemy, if everybody in this country who hates each other right now, just based on the political side, had suddenly a third party to hate together, that would bring people together. If everybody in the world with all their different beliefs, religions, ideas, hate, you know, suddenly had a universal force to hate or fight against, everybody in the world would get together to try and stop that together and put aside their differences. And that is my reasoning why I would want alien invasion. And therefore, because it would fix this world, honestly, not wreck it, I don't think it'll happen. Now, I live in an area with a lot of water, like land of 10,000 lakes, right? We actually have like 11,530 lakes or something. We actually have more than that. But if anything had ever occurred that made all of that water contaminated, undrinkable, unusable, untouchable, or anything like that, that would prove disastrous to this area because there's so much of it around. We would go from having a humongous water supply that we would have when the surrounding states would not have that same resource, right? We would have a resource that other people would not have, and therefore a lot of people would come here in spite of the cold because of the water in the warm months. But if that water all of a sudden all got contaminated, we would have the most contaminated, disgusting, dangerous, disease-ridden water of any other state too. So there's that too. That could backfire on us, right? So it could go either way, and I think about that stuff. And I am not prepared with water supply because I live in a small place that I need to leave. Like, I just don't think I can stay where I'm at. I don't think it's safe. I don't think that it's going to work. And I don't mean just in a disaster situation, but I mean right now. Like, I'm not going to be able to stay where I'm living. But let's pretend for a moment that I did. I'm in an apartment building. You can't live in an 8-story apartment building if the grid goes down and plumbing and everything fails and electricity is gone. Oh my God, could you imagine 8 floors of plumbing, one on top of another, just failing? Oh my God, that would be a mess. There's a trash chute in my building that is failing right now, and they're not fixing it. And it's broken and piling up with garbage as I speak, and it stinks. And there's bugs. No, it's awful. And that would just be an immediate disaster if there was nobody to maintain it. Now, the one thing that I know I'm not prepared for, that I consider a disaster, is a financial disaster. I'm not prepared for a financial disaster. I've had financial disasters in the past. I've had fires in the places that I've lived. I have had things where I had no money. I've had homeless before. I am not prepared for a financial collapse, disaster. I'm not. Now, I know that in some ways a financial collapse would help somebody like me because I don't have stocks, bank accounts, and the things that the people that have those things would lose immediately, right? But eventually it would come down on me too, and I would have to fight for everything because nobody would be running anywhere that I could live. And I am not prepared for a financial disaster personally. Like, I'm having a financial disaster right now and I'm not prepared for it. I'm like having problems, so yes, I am not prepared for that one. And I am not prepared for a permanent disaster. Like if we had a nuclear war, for example. I'm not saying that that's a likelihood anytime soon. It could happen though. If we had a nuclear war and everything got messed up in this country and all resources and everything were messed up, all the water was contaminated and all that, I'm not prepared for that because I don't have any water saved. Water is one of those things that I have not saved, and I don't have room to save really. And I don't have fuel saved because I'm not allowed to save it here. See, I live in a place where there's, on the lease itself, it says you cannot store fuel, gasoline, wood, like logs and stuff. You can't store any of those things in this apartment. So if I were to store those things in my apartment, I would be breaking my lease, number one. I'd have to hide them, number two. And number three, there's no space. So I can't really prepare properly like I would like to. I want to go to a place where I have a garage or an attic or just storage space, right? Or extra rooms or something. I think a lot about these things. I always have. Long before I ever started on YouTube, long before I ever got involved in the prepper community, even the MRE community, I always thought a lot about these things. I wrote up a plan in a notebook. I've been trying to think about this for years. But there are some things that I could deal with better than others. One of those reasons is because I don't know exactly how, if there was something that lasted forever, like never ended, like nuclear war or something, I would get my medications long enough. I have a feeling that if there was a permanent disaster that never ended and couldn't be solved, not just a local quick thing like a blizzard or a tornado or something, but something that lasted and never ended and changed society forever, that I would not be able to get my medication more than 5 years or so because everything expires about that long. That concerns me quite a lot because I do not like having lung problems and then thinking about that. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think about. I am not well enough prepared for that. But temporary events, I think that I'm more prepared for temporary events. But I try to prepare for permanent events because I feel that if I prepare for a permanent event, that by default, then I will be ready for the temporary ones. But yeah. So, the ones I worry about the most, I would say, are financial disasters, permanent disasters that would change everything forever, and I wouldn't be prepared when it came. Being in a city worries me. I don't know if I want to leave the city, but I sure want to leave the cold weather area. And then, like, there are things that could happen that are not likely at all. I guess, like, we could have a volcano. Like, Yellowstone Park could blow up or something and destroy everything, but we'd all be dead if that happened, right? And I wouldn't have to worry. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I think about those kind of things exactly, because I never thought that that kind of thing would absolutely happen, right? I always thought there was going to be a short thing that was going to happen, something that might last a few months. Like, if our government collapsed and there was another civil war, it wouldn't go on and on and on for the rest of our lives, you know, but it would go on for a while. There's a few things that could happen that I wouldn't be able to deal with. One of those things being if martial law ever got declared because of something that happened with our government and society. Martial law, I can barely deal with living with the laws that exist now. So if that got worse and there was military in the streets telling me when to go home, telling me what to do, no. And I think about something that would contaminate all of the nature around, where no matter how prepared you were, there's nothing you could do if you had to go out and get water or food or something, or you had to live in the woods and live off the land. If everything was a contamination zone, then that would really concern me, because I know how to live outside. I've done it. I know how to live in the woods. I've done it. But I would not have the first clue how to live in the woods outside in nature if everything was contaminated or nuclear or like radiated or something. I would have no idea what to do. I also would be a little bit messed up if an EMP happened. I would not freak out and be like, oh my God, I don't want to live anymore because there's no cell phones. Yes, I would miss electronics. I love electronics. I love technology. But I've also lived part of my life without those things. Having been somebody who was born in the 70s and lived through the 80s, 90s, 2000s till now, I grew up without internet. I grew up without cell phones. And the only people that had cell phones when I was a little kid spent like $2,000 on it. You know, the internet went live to the public the year after I graduated from high school. In high school, I did all of my papers on either a manual typewriter or I wrote everything out. So I could go back to that if I needed to, and I wouldn't freak out, but I would be very worried about other people freaking out. And I don't think that that is necessarily 1, 2, 3 straightforward. I've answered the question, but that is the only way that I knew how to do this video. So, yeah. Thank you very much. I hope that that's okay. I'll see you soon.